So this is a great question about the domain and range of piecewise functions. So I tried to take a not so great picture of the question that was the picture that was posted in the actual question on the discussion board. And I also have another example down here at the bottom. So remember with your domain, that is your inputs or your x values, and the range, those are your outputs and your y values. And the other thing that we need to remember about domain and range is that these are actual values. So they're the actual inputs and the actual outputs. So it's not just, possibly what we could get out, it's what we actually can plug in and what we actually get out. So, when we have a function like we've got drawn here, this is the whole graph. So we're looking for what are all of the x values that are used and what are all of the y values that are given out. The other thing that I wanted to note on this is that if we've got a filled in circle at the end of a graph, that is going to be a square bracket on either the beginning or end, kind of depending on where that is. Or if we're using inequalities, that's going to be a greater than or less than, or a less than or equal to. I think I said those right. Less than or equal to and a greater than or equal to. There we go. We'll say them the right way. If we've got an open circle, that's telling us we're going to use round brackets, or we're going to use just that straight less than or greater than. So here, when I'm looking at this graph, I'm going to take the pink highlighter here, and I'm looking for, where I actually have my function. So I'm first starting to look at the x-axis, and I start going, okay, do I have a graph here? Nope. Graph here? Nope. I'm going to erase those. I don't hit my graph on the x-axis until I'm here at -2. And I've got a graph all the way until -1. And then we've got a gap, and then we hit the graph again at 0, and then we've got a graph all the way until right before 4 because we've got an open circle there. So here, the domain is going to be -2 to -1, and all of those are going to get square brackets because we've got filled in circles. And then we have two parts to this domain, so we're going to put that union symbol in there, and that just means and in math lingo. So and we start up again at 0, and we go until we hit 4. Now 4 gets that round bracket because we've got an open circle there. And that remembers we go right up until we get to 4. So we can plug in 3.9, 3.999, 3.9 with however many nines you want to draw or right there. We just can't plug in the number 4. So that's our domain. We're going to do a similar thing with the range. We're looking for what actual y values do we get as outputs. So I do kind of the same thing as I look on this graph and say, okay, if I start down here in the negatives, where am I actually going to go left or right and hit a graph? And it's not going to be until I get to -3, but I'm going to be hitting a graph all the way. And even though there's an open circle over here, there's a filled in circle over on the other side. So I'm still hitting a graph. I'm still getting -3 as an output, still getting outputs, still getting outputs, still getting outputs until we get to +3. So this whole part that we've highlighted here, that's our range. So the range is going to be all the way from -3 to +3. And again, both of those get square brackets because we start with a filled in circle and we end with a filled in circle. Again, this open circle here at -3, that's not a problem because we do have an output of -3 right here over on the other side. So we do actually get that as an output. So that's our whole range and our whole domain. All right, let's take a look at the other example that I have. Again, I'm going to be just a minute, and remember you can always pause if you need to write anything down. Okay, so let's take a look at another graph that's got gaps on both the domain and the range. So again, that domain, I'm looking for what parts of the x-axis do I have graphs, and it starts here at -4, and it goes and it goes and it goes until we get to 0, and I'm going to put a round bracket there. So sometimes this is how I draw it, that I'll put a square bracket where I've got that filled in circle and a round bracket where I've got that open circle. And then we start up again right after 1, and we go and we go and we go. And we have a graph and we have a graph until 5. So that's going to make our domain a square bracket on -4 until 0 with a round bracket, and then that union. and then we start up again right after 1, and we go until 5. And then our range, we'll do this in green here. Again, it's where we have y values as outputs. And we get our first output here at -2, and it gets at that square bracket because we've got that filled in circle. And we go and we go and we go until we get to just -1 there. And then we have a big gap until we get to -2 or +2, and we go until we get to +3. Sometimes what people do when they're looking at the range is they'll take their graph and they'll rotate it 90 degrees. They'll basically turn it, 90 degrees that way so that the y-axis looks like the x-axis, and that helps them realize what their range is. But here, our range, it's going to start at -2, go until -1. We get a round bracket there because we've got that open circle. Union, it picks up again at 2 with a square bracket and stops at 3 with a round bracket. I was just about to put that square bracket in there. This one's got a round bracket. This was a great question. Happy to do more examples if y'all need. Just let me know.